Hey guys, what's going on? This is John with Gamester81.com. I'm here at the Retro Gaming Expo in Portland, Oregon, and let's go check it out and see what's inside. Guys, I had an amazing time at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. This isn't the first year this expo has been around. They've been around for quite a while. This is the first year I attended, however, and this is held September 29th through 30th, downtown Portland's first time it's been held at the Portland Convention Center. 3,000 people attended in 2 days. Pretty large size. This is Atari Age, great website, atariage.com. The great forum on there as well. You can join the great forums. A lot of homebrew games they had on sale. Some Jaguar game right there, Downfall. All these homebrew games. Some of them they actually launched special for this event, which I'll show you in a second. They had there's Tempest, Boulder Dash was one that they launched. There's Halo 2600, big poster. Yes, they had Halo 2600 here as well. It was a silver label, not the black label, the first one that was available at Classic Gaming Expo. But they had a Tetris game available that was for the 2600, never released. Great music for that, surprisingly, for Atari 2600 system. I love how they have all these games on classic Commodore 64 monitors. It's great. There's Pac-Man special. They had a Super Mario Brothers game for Atari 2600. So it played just like Super Mario Brothers, but for the 2600. So obviously the graphics weren't nearly as good. Here's another vendor here. They had some great items as well, including some classic 7800 games. All these were new stock, new old stock, meaning they were never opened and sealed. Guys was given a great deal. You can kind of barter, you can negotiate with a lot of these sellers, and especially last day on Sunday, a lot of them were just not wanting to hold on to a lot of their inventory, so you could see 50% off a lot of these games. Just a ton of retro games, Sega CD games, handhelds, classic Tiger handhelds there, a lot of Game Boys. So nice variety of different items. This vendor had a lot of import games, a lot of classic PC games, classic Apple games as well, which is great. Genesis games are always common to find in clamshell cases, or more common than you would say a box Super Nintendo game. This guy was cool. It's a cool vendor. What he did was he had all these plastic clamshells, and he printed the labels or the covers, and he made his own case for these games. So a nice little display here. Every vendor had things displayed differently. A lot of them had bins. The guy showed me Super Noah's 3D, which is a really rare game for the Super Nintendo. The only unlicensed Super Nintendo game that there is. And in order to play it, you have to plug in a normal Super Nintendo game in order to play it. And basically, it's Wolfenstein 3D, but instead you're like Noah and you're feeding these animals. It's really crazy. So, but most vendors have these bins, just some Zelda games, and not thinking about N64 games. I love them to death, but it's hard to read the labels because there's no top label for them, which is kind of annoying that Nintendo decided to do that. This guy right here had a bunch of homebrew games as well as like games that weren't necessarily produced, repos. A lot of Sega Master System games right there. Jaguar, Pitfall, some Jag CDs, some box NES games. Of course, gotta love the Saturn games. Nothing too crazy rare, nothing like a Panzer Dragoon Saga, but they had a nice selection. Dreamcast, some import Mega Drive games. There's TurboGrafx 16 in cases. I love TurboGrafx 16. To me, it's a very underrated console. Definitely something you should look to get into if you haven't done already. A Snow Job is actually starring. It was a 3DO game, full motion video style game. This vendor had a whole bunch of imports. That Mark III, that Sega, was a predecessor to the Sega Master System. Right? In fact, I think it is a Sega Master System, but it's just a Japanese version of it. Shuttle PC Engine. There's a Satellaview. That's for the Super Famicom. And there's some more TurboGrafx 16 games. That's a long cardboard box, Adam's Family. So basically, the TurboGrafx 16 games, the way they worked, they came in a cardboard box, and they had a kind of a jewel case inside. So here, this guy had. Now, some people just brought their stuff to sell. So this is an example of a guy who just came in, brought some stuff. Old Nintendo Power magazines, for example, looking to sell some stuff. Old classic Atari. Can't forget about the Atari, the ColecoVision, Commodore 64. That's one thing I really liked about this place is they had a lot of variety of different games. Nintendo right there, anywhere from handheld to PC. They did have an auction on Saturday night, and they fundraised a lot of money for that. Some auctions went to charity, some didn't, but that was always a great time. I was unable to attend the auction, unfortunately, but I heard it went really, really well. More boxed games. Some Game Boy Color games, controllers. There's a PSP display, which is kind of cool display unit. I love the PS1 there with the built-in screen. That's really cool. I love that the PS1 and how Sony did that. Those mini screens for the PS1 monitors are really good too for doing like modifications and stuff like that. Classic gaming strategy guides. Who'd have thought some of those would be worth a lot of money? Now, this particular one had some games you could test and try out. Some Genesis games like Miss Pac-Man, some Atari. Ghostbusters, looks like for the Atari 2600, and there's some ColecoVision games. This guy right here had a built-in Commodore 64 game that had 120 something built-in games in one, which is cool. So it's like a multi thing, and you can see it there. There's a switch on top. I love the Commodore 64. It's one of my favorite retro computers. Grew up, my grandparents had one. Used to go to them all the time and play. It's a fantastic time. I love Diablo. Man, I played Diablo a lot in college. Played that game so much. Here are some Genesis games in Intellivision box and television. That's in Television 2, Odyssey 2, with some games. There's some figures, action figures like that. Plush. There's a Care Bears, X-Men. Nice variety of stuff. This is a cool vendor. A lot of pop culture items, things that you typically find at maybe like a Comic-Con, comic convention. But still very cool. A lot of classic Pac-Man stuff. This guy right here, that's John Hancock. He's a huge gamer, collector. They had a whole bunch of home brews here selling, and he had some DVDs he was selling as well. Awesome collection. That is code Road Warrior. That's a game exclusively available here at this expo. I think it was 1 in 50 they made. It came with like a car, like a Matchbox car, Hot Wheels, and it also came with an audio CD, which my good friend Jason Metal Jesus Rocks did a soundtrack for, at least one song for, and really cool. This is Hyperkin, selling some stuff. Hyperkin makes a lot of clones and system clones, stuff like that. Here's some more guys selling, some Hyperkins. They make the Superboy, which is a portable Super Nintendo. They were there on site doing some stuff. More goodies. This convention was actually pretty decent size. It didn't really feel like it was overwhelming in size by all means. I felt it was pretty good. There weren't huge lines. It's getting bigger and bigger every year. This is cool. Rockhead, they actually make some really cool T-shirts. that vendor was selling these cool things that you put in your plants. My wife actually ended up getting one of those plants, those piranha plants. But there's some more examples of some more characters you can buy. Really cool artwork. I love some of the attention to detail they put in some of the stuff. Was fascinating, really great. Bunch of N64 games, Super Nintendo games. Now and it was really surprising in contrast going in on Saturday in the morning and then kind of leaving on Sunday and seeing how much stuff had sold. That's actually soap right there. Those Super Nintendo cards, those white ones are soap. They're shaped, and that's Super Nintendo soap as well. It's shaped like cartridges. I don't know why you necessarily want to use it as soap, but it's soap. So this particular vendor, I believe, is out of Seattle. A lot of these vendors were local from Seattle, Portland area, but some of them did come from farther away. Box Genesis, box, and Nintendo Action Set. Nintendo is one of those really, really popular things right now. A lot of people are wanting to get more into Nintendo, and Nintendo prices have gone up a lot. Look at games like Little Samson, and a lot of those games go for hundreds of dollars. And to be able to collect some games, like I really want Box Adventure, for example. That's a really expensive game. DuckTales 2, you could buy several years ago, and get for a fairly good deal. Now it's hundreds of dollars as well. It's kind of unfortunate for gamers. This vendor put his own labels on his N64 games. Some Box Lynx games, Atari Lynx, a 3DO with light gun. Wow, I didn't even notice that there was a light gun there. I wish I snagged that because that's a very rare item for the 3DO is a light gun for that. It's funny. More Saturn games, Sega CD games. Xbox as well, original Xbox. It's debatable if you consider Xbox a retro console or even PS2 a retro console. Uh, curious what you guys think. Please leave a comment below and let me know what you guys feel about that kind of thing. But here's some more. This is GameCube games and Nintendo games, Dreamcast. Dreamcast is one of my favorite retro games as well. Ton of PS2 games, nothing really in order. Love the guy's shirt, his Donkey Kong shirt. That's pretty cool. Just noticed that as well. Some Game Gear games. I didn't see too many Game Gear games here. There are of course a few, but Game Gear doesn't see much love. There's Rude Joey. This is Retroware TV. The panel here's the Game Chasers, and there's Billy and all them. Jay. Actually, no, I don't see Billy there. I was just Jay, but great guys, great website. Check them out for sure. Everyone's waving. Everyone's super friendly to the camera. It's funny what people do in front of cameras sometimes. This kind of a really cool diorama setup where he had a whole bunch of cool, artwork like beadwork. I don't know what you necessarily call it, but he had a cool diorama. The way he framed it was very, very unique, and I never seen that before. I think it's very well done, actually. Some box games, Super Nintendo games. There's the original first Nintendo Power there with Mario, the clay one. Man, it's too bad Nintendo Power is no longer around as of this December coming up. There's Bonk's Adventure, but he was asking way too much for it. I forget what he was asking for it, but out of my price range, unfortunately, as I was mentioned before, not very cost. It's kind of cost prohibitive to get into Nintendo collecting, at least completing your collection. This guy was cool. He had a whole bunch of Star Wars stuff. God, love the Star Wars. If you guys know me, I'm a big fan of Star Wars. Absolutely. He wasn't there, present at that time of filming, but yeah, I know he was pretty busy. Ton of classic PC games too from the 1990 era. So Diablo 2, games like that were awesome. SimCity 2000 played a lot. Classic computers. Here's some more. There's Super Nintendo games. Super Game Boy. I loved the Super Game Boy when it came out. It was such a handy thing to own. A ton of box Super Nintendo games, Jaguar games, N64, some box Game Boy games. Box Game Boy games are actually fairly hard to find. To find a box Game Boy games, I think most kids just end up throwing them out. Sega CD cases, and some of them were loose, so you just can go through like you like a music CD album, see what you want. Here's some Spawn figures and World of Warcraft, stuff like that, figures. More Nintendo. As you can see, there's plenty of NES games. Nothing really super rare that I saw, at least. I'm sure a lot of the super rare games ended up going first. There are a few, though, that were there. Some Blu-ray games and 360, of course. They did have some modern games there as well, and there was a section of PS3 games. But for me, retro games is where gaming started, and it's just I am more fond of the more love for retro gaming than modern day gaming. Although I do obviously enjoy play plenty of modern day games today. Here is PlayStation games, PlayStation 2, I should say. PlayStation 1, TurboGrafx 16. And they had a lot of those long box 3DO games. A lot of old strategy guys. This guy put them in plastic, protect them, which is probably a pretty smart idea. I can't imagine the logistics of moving all this stuff and setting up to display. These vendors put a lot of work into it now. This show obviously wasn't just the floor. They also had panels and discussions. In fact, I was part of the Allgengamers podcast panel as me, Jason Milgis Rocks, and Jason, the EMU review. And we had a panel on our Allgengamers podcast. First live panel I've ever been a part of, and I'll tell you what, it was awesome. We gave away some games. If you guys are curious to see that panel live, you can go on to our YouTube channel, allgengamers.com. Or I'm sorry, it's just YouTube/allgengamers. And our website's allgengamers.com. They're linked there as well. This section had a lot more retro games, which is cool. Look at all those PS1 consoles. I think it was like $5 for those. Look at this table right here with all these Tiger Electronics accessories and games. Pretty unbelievable. Kind of range in price. Some of them have back coverings for batteries, I noticed. A lot of the Disney ones. I used to love these old LCD Tiger handhelds, and just looking back on it, the graphics were terrible. There was an R Zone right there in the very, very back. There's an R Zone also right there. R Zone. There's three different models of the R Zone by Tiger, and yeah, not a very good console at all. In fact, it's rated as one of the worst consoles of all time. But this is a really cool booth. Really cool to see all these Tiger electronic items. Board games even too. I mean, who said board games not part of retro gaming? It certainly is. There's Snoopy skateboarding. There's some Odyssey 2 cards because they have the handle there. Very unusual. Looks like there's an Atari computer and a ColecoVision, Dreamcast 32X box. And there's some more Sega Master System, which is interesting. Some classic, looks like yellow Game Gear. That's really interesting that they have that. Those are some Vectrex games. Jaguar was well representative. I'd finally completed my Jaguar CD collection of games, so my library of Jaguar CD games are complete. There were only maybe a dozen or so that were released for that system, so it came out in the deathbed of the Jaguar, so it didn't do very well. But to say I have a complete collection, it's pretty cool, pretty fun. Import Dreamcast games. There's a U-Force for the Nintendo, and basically the way you'd use your hand and move around, it didn't work at all. I remember owning one of those growing up, and it was absolutely terrible. Just didn't work very well at all. There's so many peripherals for the NES that came out, and it seemed like half of them didn't even work. Some joysticks. There's Odyssey as a pawn clone. Power pad. I picked up a power pad complete in box for $10 at this Expo, which I think was a fairly decent deal. I had a loose one, but to find it complete in box was cool. There's the Jetsons for NES, pretty rare games. Some box that some more uncommon games. Game Boy, those are graded, VGA graded. What do you guys think about grading games? It seems to definitely drive up the price and value of them. People tend to buy them. So what do you guys think about like grading your Nintendo games or your video games in general? I have mixed feelings. This vendor's cool. There's California Raisins there is in the purple in the back. It's an unreleased game for Capcom, and I guess it plays terrible, but that was a kind of a repo cart, and it looked legit. So you gotta be careful because you don't want to buy something expensive thinking it's legit and when it's a repo. But they were pretty open about it. But the problem is, if I were to buy it and then resell it to someone who might be naive enough to think it's a real, that could be a problem. But very, very cool site. I think Nintendo Age put that on. Here's some more anime stuff, which is cool. Gotta love the anime stuff. A lot of viewers here are fans of anime. I definitely appreciate anime a lot. Vectrex, one of my favorite consoles. It's a steering wheel for the Vectrex. This is Chuck's booth. He's the guy who actually spearheaded this. Was one of the people who put on this expo. He also goes by the Recycled Gamer. And he had a lot of cool stuff here, including that Vectrex with the steering wheel, which is really neat. The PS1, there's this Genesis, Model 3, some light games, the Hyperscan, which is terrible, Tekken 5 controller, GameCube, PlayStation 1, and a ton of PlayStation 1 games. PlayStation 1 is one of those systems I really want to get more into. So many great games. Thousands of games for the PlayStation 1. And I don't say PSX, I know a lot of people refer to the PSX, but the PSX is actually a separate console altogether. It came out in Japan. It was a DVR. Did a review on it a while ago. 3DO games line box. And some more Tiger games. You can just get the feeling how big this place was. It was definitely cool. I spent all day here. Cool booth here. A whole bunch of box games. More 7800 games. There's a box 3DO. Some 3DO games. There's a game gun right there. Controllers, stuff like that. Looks like that's an Odyssey 2 games box. A lot of classic computers in this one right here. So they had a Atari 400. They had a lot of classic Apple computers as well. Apple II. I grew up on the Apple IIc. Looks like that's an Apple IIe right there in the corner. And the first version of the Mac, one of the first Macintosh. SE computers, which I grew up on as well, with a gray monitor board and stuff. So Apple has obviously come a long way since those early days of Macintosh, and those things are very collectible. This is some import games as well, the basic, the Famicom stuff. This is Astro Gover right there. That right there, you can barely see it, but that game was a prototype game found at a Goodwill, and it was released on I think one of the classic computers like Commodore 64, but that's a 5200. So it was a prototype. The guy decided to make 50 carts, only available here at the convention. I picked up one. Mine said like 15 out of 50, but that's really cool that he did that. And it's basically it's a Sesame Street children's game, but it's a prototype, so never released, and it's super rare. But it's cool to have like a repo cart. Very, very nice that he was able to do that. Some classic 2600 games, Game Boy games. There's those yellow Game Boy games, or the Donkey Kong Land series. Love all three of those. A lot of fun to play. Gotta love the classic Halo Master Chief helmet. Halo 4 is coming out soon as of filming this video, or putting this video out. Can't wait till that comes out. It'll be interesting how that game does post a Bungie and all. 2600, I think it's a clone console right there. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. Some classic manuals. A lot of people are into collecting manuals and completing their sets, and that's what this vendor had. Some classic Vectrix games right there. I love the 80s memorabilia. They have their Pac-Man. There's a plush Miss Pac-Man. Some classic Famicom games from the Japanese Nintendo Famicom. Dragons and Warriors, stuff like that. Comic books. Really cool vendor, and the guy was a really nice dude as well. There's more There's a Pac-Man kind of bag. Game Boy printer, Game Boy camera. Dual Space, that's the very first stand-up arcade ever released. Kind of interesting history fact there. Television 3. As you can see, guys, plenty of games. Just could spend a lot of money here. I ended up picking up this particular booth. I ended up picking up a Sega CD front loader system. I had one before. Mine was broken, but I ended up picking one up. That works perfect. Those are really finicky models, and a lot of them don't work. But mine, the one I picked up here, works. I paid $60 for it, which is not too bad for a front-loading Sega CD console, which is great. So you can see the deals are decent. People are very friendly. If you're in the Portland area next year to this time, certainly you want to check out Portland Retro Gaming Expo. So the website's just retrogamingexpo.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you for subscribing. We'll see you soon. Take care.